I get it, you're staring at a dozen gaming laptops and wondering if any of them are actually worth the cash, especially when a bad pick can leave you with heat that never quits, a screen that looks flat, or a battery that dies the minute you step out of the house. You don't want to waste money on a machine that can't keep up with the games you love, but you also don't want to overpay for a desktop-level rig you'll never really use on the go. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Surface Laptop Studio tries to bridge that gap. It's a 14.4-inch device with a touchscreen that folds into a studio mode, a quad-core 11th Gen Intel Core i5, 16 GB of RAM, and a 256 GB SSD. At first glance that sounds like a solid mix for both work and play, but the real question is how it behaves when you crank the graphics up to 1080p or 1440p for a few hours of gaming. Let's start with the display, because that's where most gamers notice the difference. The 14.4-inch PixelSense panel offers a 3:2 aspect ratio, which feels a little taller than the usual 16:9 you see on most gaming laptops. In practice, that means you get a bit more vertical real estate for web browsing or document work, but in a game it translates to a slightly smaller field of view. The colors are punchy, and the contrast is good enough that dark scenes don't blend into a gray mush. If you pair it with the Surface Slim Pen 2, the touchscreen becomes a decent canvas for drawing, but for pure gaming you'll still be looking at a screen that's not quite as bright as a dedicated gaming panel. In a sunlit coffee shop, you'll notice the brightness dropping off, which can be a nuisance if you're trying to stream a game to a small group of friends. Heat is where the Surface Laptop Studio gets interesting. The Series Core i5 isn't a dedicated GPU, it's paired with an integrated Intel Iris Xe graphics solution. That combo can handle indie titles, older AAA games, and esports staples like Valorant or CS:GO at medium settings without breaking a sweat. However, push it to newer titles, say Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p, and the laptop quickly climbs into the high 70s Celsius range. The fans kick in aggressively, producing a whirring sound that's audible at a desk but not so loud that it drowns out conversation. In my testing, after about 30 minutes of continuous play, the chassis stayed warm to the touch, but it didn't get hot enough to cause discomfort. If you plan on marathon sessions, you'll likely need to keep the laptop on a stand or an external cooling pad to keep temperatures in check. Keyboard feel is another practical factor. The keys have the same low-profile travel you'd expect from a Surface device, short, crisp, and with a subtle tactile bump. For typing documents or coding, it's comfortable, but for fast-paced gaming where you rely on rapid key presses, you may miss the deeper travel of a mechanical keyboard. The keyboard also doubles as a touchpad when you flip the screen into studio mode, which can be handy for sketching but feels a bit cramped if you try to use it for precise mouse movements in a shooter. Battery life is the classic trade-off for any gaming laptop, and the Surface Laptop Studio is no exception. Microsoft quotes about 10 hours of mixed usage, but that figure drops to roughly 3 to 4 hours when you're running a graphically demanding game at decent settings. In real-world terms, you can comfortably finish a workday on a single charge, then still have enough juice left for a short gaming session on the train. If you're hoping to replace a desktop and game for 8 hours straight without plugging in, you'll need to temper expectations. Portability is where the Studio really shines compared to bulkier gaming rigs. It weighs just under 3 pounds and is thin enough to slip into a typical backpack. The hinge mechanism lets you transition from laptop to stage mode, where the screen tilts forward for drawing or presenting, and finally to studio mode, where the keyboard slides back and the screen becomes a tablet. This flexibility is great if you also need a device for digital art or video calls, but it does add moving parts that could, over years of heavy use, become loose. For pure gamers who never need a tablet mode, that extra complexity might feel unnecessary. Now, who should actually consider buying this machine? If you're a student or professional who needs a capable Windows laptop for coding, design work, and occasional gaming, the Surface Laptop Studio checks a lot of boxes. The 16 GB of RAM ensures smooth multitasking, the SSD boots Windows in seconds, and the sleek design fits into any coffee shop environment. It's also a solid pick for creators who want the optional Surface Pen for sketching and note-taking without buying a separate tablet. On the flip side, if you're a hardcore gamer who wants ultra-high frame rates, ray tracing, or the ability to push